That's your boy Gooch.
Nope, that's Aaron. That is the boy Keys.
Right. That's Aaron. And this is the RogueHead Huddle with Gooch and Keys with our special guest, the Mod Father, once again as we conclude this series on our way too early 53-man predictions. Gooch?
Check out all the other stuff we have on RGR. Shop at the store. Buy the All Juice T-shirt in honor of Therese. Watch the film that somebody puts out 2 or 3 times a week. Chief in the North on Thursday. Live stream on Monday. Let's get to work. My 53 is going to be closest. I'm just going to say that right now.
I think you already forfeited from last time.
Yeah, I think I got to pick for him or something when he ducked out.
Me and Keys were right. We just get to tell you that now.
All right, well, in our last two videos, we looked at offense, special teams, and defense, and together we came up with 34 locks. That doesn't mean that each of us agreed on those 34, but that all three of us had to agree on each player, and we had 34 players that we agreed on across the board that were going to make this team. 18 on offense, 13 on defense, and of course 3 on special teams. That's the easiest, right? Punter, kicker, long snapper. Those are the 3 easiest picks, along with Patrick Mahomes as quarterback. And probably Chris Jones as defensive tackle and Travis as tight end number 1. And so I'm going to do a quick recap on the 34 players that we had consensus as locks. Of course, at quarterback, we had Pat and Chad. Running back, we had CEH. And if you want to include them, if you want to include the fullbacks with the running backs, we had Michael Burton. We chose to keep them separately. Wide receivers, we had McColl, obviously, MVS, Juju, and Sky Moore. So we had 4 wide receivers that we had a consensus on. We had 3 tight ends, including Travis, Jody, and Noah Gray. 2 offensive tackles, Orlando Brown Jr. and Darian Kennard. If Lucas Niang actually starts the season healthy, we would have put him on there, but we believe that he's going to start the season on the PUP list, so that's why he wasn't included. 4 guards, Joe Tooney, Trey Smith, Nick Allegretti, and Andrew Wiley, and 1 center being Creed. On the defense, we had Frank and George Karlaftis as the edge players. We had at that point put Melvin Ingram on there in case he re-signed with the Chiefs, but since that filming, he has signed with the Dolphins, so he's no longer on there. At defensive tackle, we had Chris Jones, Tershawn Wharton, and Derek Nottie. Linebackers, Nick Bolton, Willie Gay, and Leo Chenal. Cornerbacks, we had 2. We had Snead and McDuffie. We had 3 safeties, Thornhill, Reed, and Cook. And that is the 34 players that we had a consensus on, which means that we have 19 spots remaining. Since we had 18 offense and 13 defense, if we ended up with a balanced 25 and 25 on there, that would leave us with 7 offensive picks and 12 defensive picks. Not that we have to, but it probably will be somewhat balanced, really close, 22 to 25 on each side, which would leave, 22 to 27 or 28 possibly on one side, but I doubt it gets more than 1 or 2 away from 25 and 25. What do you guys think?
I think it's 28-25.
28-25. Well, we'll find out here soon as we go through. Quarterback.
Doubt that I'm right again.
Quarterbacks. Do you think we're going to add a third quarterback, or are we good with the quarterback room?
I think we have the third one.
You think we do have a third one?
I think they like. I'm not even gonna try and mess up his name. The undrafted free agent that we got, not Bouchel, the other kid that was ranked the number one on UDFA.
I don't know you're talking about. Crum, I think, is one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way they care enough about him that they put him on the 53.
I think they do, because how long do you think that Mahomes is going to need a veteran quarterback in the room?
I don't think more than another year, but they had Bouchel in there last year, and they brought him up to the 53 eventually to protect him from other teams signing him. So I would think he would clearly have an upper hand over a UDFA that they just brought in this year. If this kid, I mean, he was a UDFA, so if anything, they'll either show little tape on him, or he'll have a mysterious injury and probably end up on the practice squad one way or the other.
Either way, we're still keeping 3.
I think in the first episode I argued for 3, and I argued for Bouchel, and I'm not sure that I'm going to argue for 3 again. I think if there are 3, it's going to be because they like Bouchel. And as you said, but for Bouchel instead, they don't think they can fit him onto the practice squad, which very well could be the case because, again, at the end of last season, they did bring him up off the practice squad, so and protected him multiple times over. So they obviously like him, and it seemed like last year anyway, there were other teams that wanted to sign him. So what do you think, Aaron?
I was gonna say, don't be quiet over there, Double A.
It didn't want to unmute me. Sorry.
Somebody pull his string. He's not talking.
I was trying to unmute it. So I think they go with 2 at least to start with. If somebody starts poking around Bouchel, maybe. Because, yeah, it'd be kind of weird to protect him last year and then not at all this year.
Right. I think I'm going to defer until we finish the offensive side and see how many players I end up with. Because I think that's partially how it's going to work out in real life, right? It's going to be I think there's going to be some positions that are going to be at the very end that they're going to look at the rest of these 19 guys on here, and it's going to come down to, do we want 3 quarterbacks? You know, do we have 4 tight ends already on the roster? You know, are we keeping 12 defensive backs, or, you know, whatever? And so I think that's how it's going to come down to. I think third quarterback is probably one of the 50 to 53, you know, the last 3 spots on this roster that they'll decide whether they're going to go with a third quarterback or just stick with 2. I think it's going to come down to one of those last 2 or 3 spots for them.
On the 53 that I came up with, I've only got the 2.
Would you, Gooch, would you agree with that reasoning that if they keep 3, it's probably going to come down to, it's going to be one of those last 2 or 3 spots on there where they decide?
Sure. I mean,
okay. And maybe 53 itself, if that's their last debate, this player or keeping 3 quarterbacks.
Probably at the end, because as we move along, you'll see where I come up with. Like, I think they hold them because they're going to have the roster spot. I don't think. In my personal opinion, I don't think there's 53 guys in here that I would want to make this roster. You know what I'm saying? And then there's, you just start, well, we'll keep that guy because trade bait, or if in case the unthinkable happens, You know what I'm saying? I was having trouble. I didn't write a whole 53 down, but I was having trouble finding 53 that I would even want.
I don't know that I had that problem, but I mean, you do bring up an interesting point that other teams, even between now and cut day, are going to cut other players that the Chiefs will probably bring in who may end up making this roster and on cut day or after cut day. Once they get down, uh, they make their cuts. They're probably going to bring in veterans or other players that teams have cut, and so even though there may be guys who initially make that 53, a day or two later they find themselves not on the 53. So, um, but yeah, if I
Former
think it
first round picks like Beach likes to do.
right, I think if they do like Crumb as much as you do, and they still like Bushell, they might they might only stick with two and figure at least one of these two guys is going to make it onto the practice squad, and we'll be fine with that if that happens. So, how do you guys see the rest of the running back room playing out?
All right, I'll go. Um, I think CEH becomes a future cat casualty. It's going to start with him, but I think I like Pacheco and Ely. They're a lot more explosive than CEH, um, and they can still catch the ball. Like it's not nothing against CEH's hands. I watched him in college. He has them, but he's not as explosive as those other two guys. And I think you do that. I think Pacheco. I can't remember. Maybe yeah. Pacheco makes his way on because of his special teams, because you've got somebody back there that can return. But also him and Ely are basically, I mean, their explosiveness might be the same, but they both do different things. Like Pacheco hits the hole, Ely's more of an outside guy, or maybe I got them reversed, but you know what I'm trying to say. And then you use Rojo in the Daryl Williams role to kind of be that staunch third down, blindside extra blocker, or safety valve or 1 yard guy. And I think CH finds himself on the short list.
I would like to see Rojo not make the roster because these other guys take it over. Gore, Ely, and Pacheco. So yeah, I think CEH stays at least for another year. And then hopefully Gore, Ely, and Pacheco move Rojo off the roster.
The reason why I didn't say Gore is because he's getting up there already in age, even if he hasn't.
Just an age though, not miles.
Well, yeah, but what scares me is that have we seen his potential already, or his ceiling already? I guess I should say. And I worry about that because if we have, in all reality, he's no better than Clyde, in my opinion, mine and mine alone. These are not the opinions of RGR or the other two guys on this channel. In my opinion, if we've already seen his ceiling, he's no better than CEH.
I said, here's a guy who didn't see my video on Back Talk Bros the other day. I'm 100% with Aaron on this, on what I'd like to see. I actually think Pacheco is going to be more of your Daryl replacement, especially because I think he might end up being the best blocking running back on the team. I've heard some Ely comps to Dexter McCluster or even Dat, and I don't know that he has the agility and explosiveness for that, but it'd be interesting to see if they have an idea for Ely that's geared more towards uh, receiving. I would say though, if he makes the team, you know, what does that say for what they think about CEH? Because again, when everybody, got around, even those of us who got around to the pick, even though we didn't like where he was picked, it was like Brett Coleman came out with this video of why CEH was going to be so great. And the things he did in college, one of the big ones was, his route tree and his receiving ability that we haven't seen. And so if you bring in a UDFA and you're throwing the ball to him, and you throw the ball to Derek Gore, how many looks is that going to leave for CEH? Last year, it seemed like Darrell got a lot of those looks. McKinnon got, a good deal of those looks. I think Gore had a dozen or so of those looks. And I'm going to push back with on Gooch here a little bit, and I'm going to agree with Aaron again. He's Gore's getting up there in age, but he does not have the mileage on him. And as far as what we saw, and I did the video for Backtalk Bros. Gore was by far the most explosive running back that we had on the team last year, um, in as far as CEH and Darrell, and I even compared him to Ronald Jones. To me, Ronald Jones is CEH insurance. The contract is really incentive laden to up to $5 million. Basically, to me, what that says is, if CEH has a preseason injury, or, maybe if they were to cut him, I don't think they're going to, but if something happened and Ronald Jones, steps into that starter role, he has the opportunity to get paid like a starter. He gets the opportunity to get basically CEH's money. Um, but they can cut him, and I'm going to correct Ryan here because he said on the live a week or so ago that they couldn't cut Ronald Jones because it would be like $1.5 million. That's not true. It would only be 750,000 in dead cap money if they cut Ronald Jones, which you can clearly walk away from $750,000. Um, it's not completely painless, but you can do it and it'd be fairly painless. So to me, Jones is more insurance at this point. Um, Kind of a depth signing, in case they weren't or aren't able to find running backs that they can trust and that, something happens as far as injuries, they weren't left, with their pants down. So I'm not sure that Jones makes the roster. So I'm with Aaron on this. Um, I'm not sure that any of these guys, though. I still think they're kind of iffy. I want to see Pacheco. I'd like to see Ely. I'm not sure if he will. I'd like to see Gore. I'm not 100% sure that he will. Um, but I mean, if you look at last year, I think Gore has shown that he deserves a greater look, and we're basically paying him pennies on the dollar anyway. So, it's not like we're talking about uh, signing the guy to a 3-year extension where we really care about his age, you know. So, that's my take on it. Gooch, I know you want to try to rebut something I said
We
there.
keeping track of this? Are we keeping track of the numbers? I'm gonna explain something to y'all real quick. We kept 5 RBs last year. At least I think we did. Minimum 4. CH, Darrell, McKinnon, Gore, and is there somebody else? You're gonna have 5 backs this year. I think we keep 5, including Burton. I think it's Rojo, CEH, Pacheco, and Ely. And I think Gore goes back to the practice squad. I think the other 2, even if you really like them, if you try to send them through, somebody's going to pick them up. They're cheap. They would be cheap. And you can run them ragged. And with Nagy back, think about this. The Chiefs' offense hasn't thrown to the RB since Nagy left. Not really. I mean, we've done the Andy Reid screens and stuff like that, but when Nagy and Hunt was here, like Hunt got a lot more balls thrown his way. So CEH is going to get plenty of chances to work himself off this roster. And then we'll have the young guns. And I don't hate CEH. I just think we wasted a pick.
So let me quiz you. Which running back on our roster or who was on our roster last year had a reception over 38 yards? Because Daryl did. Daryl had 2, I believe.
I was going to say the only running back is Daryl. There's not one on our roster now.
False. Derek Gore had a 50-yard reception last year.
Did he?
He did. Like I said, this guy hasn't watched my video on Derek Gore on Backtalk Bros. Derek Gore is the only player on our running back room who had a 50-yard reception, and additionally, he had the longest run of a Chief running back with a 51-yarder. So 51-yard run and a 50-yard reception.
Well, I stand corrected.
Write this date down in your calendar, folks. Gooch was wrong.
For once.
All right, so if we keep to 2 quarterbacks, and
I'm at 7.
and we add 3 more running backs, whether that's Pacheco, Ely, Gore, or Jones, and it sounds like we at least have consensus on Pacheco and Ely amongst the 3 of us. Aaron?
Yeah, I agree. I think,
Yes.
again, I think we keep 5. I think I'm the only one that thinks Gore is the odd man out. Not because he didn't have explosive plays. Hi, Dan. I just think because he's going to be one of the oldest ones in the room. And he may not have a lot of miles, but the one thing that these Chiefs team has done wonders in is they've gotten younger. And they're going to want those young guys with no miles. You know, well, I mean, they have miles from college, but, 28 for Gore versus 22, 23 for Pacheco and Ely.
I will say, though, last year we might have had 4 running backs plus Burton, but we also the news came out 2 or 3 weeks ago that CEH had gallbladder surgery preseason, even before preseason, and had lost a lot of weight from that surgery and was still dealing with core issues, as a result of that surgery. So did we have 4 running backs plus Burton? Did we have 5, because they wanted to have 5, or did they have 5 because they knew about an injury that we didn't know about? And so they wanted an extra running back in that room because of CEH having that surgery and losing all the weight and all the struggles he had. Should we expect that we're going to have 4 running backs plus Burton? Was last year carrying that more because of Clyde's injury and his recovery from it.
We seem to typically keep 5 if we're going to count the fullback.
So we haven't even finished. Are we gonna have Blake Bell?
No.
Gooch says no. Aaron?
Yes.
Aaron says yes. Now, we already talked about how we fought over this last year, and then we switched sides on it. At this point, however, I'm not as much of a Blake Bell fan as I was after after looking at his blocking numbers before last season and everything. That said,
I am not a Bell fan. I just think he makes the team.
He's like a Bell fan to me.
Part Part of me says that he's on the roster as Jody insurance because, Jody, he's, he's not fully healthy yet. We have no idea. Like, in our minds, this is kind of like Madden, to where a player gets injured and they come back the next season and they're exactly the same as they were the season before. And we have no idea. We don't know. Jody's injury, isn't something that we know that he's going to have the explosiveness of, that he's going to be able to keep the same vertical that he had last year, because this is a leg injury. So I think to some extent, Blake Bell being on the roster is, insurance for Jody. At the same time, again, this is another one, and so Gooch is going to disagree with me on. Blake Bell is another one of those players that if you cut him, you're paying him like you have $1 million against you in dead cap. And so to me, that contract structure says this is someone that they don't expect to cut. So for that reason, even though I don't want him on the roster, I think that somebody else should be the quarterback sneak guy instead of Bell. I think you can bring in a sixth offensive lineman to block. For whatever reason, I think it looks like Blake Bell makes this team. So I guess I'm stuck with 4 tight ends.
What was that extra tackle's name, Gooch? Prince something?
Oh, Prince Winnebago?
He just wanted you to pronounce
Prince
it right.
Taco Winnebago. Taco Winnebago?
Winnebago? Like
Is
a BOGO taco?
that close?
Blake Bell does enough things. He just
Yes.
doesn't do much of them well. And so I'm not going to be happy about it, but I still think that he's going to make the roster looking at that. But since, Aaron, you brought up offensive tackle, let's go ahead and move on to offensive tackle. We had Orlando Brown Jr. and Darian Kennard. Again, we figure that Lucas Niang is going to start the season on the physically unable to perform list. Otherwise, we would have him on there as well. And so since he's not exactly eligible on our 53 man because we see him being on the pup list, how many more offensive tackles and who are you adding to that list?
Just tackles?
Just tackles.
Kennard, I don't know how to.
Prince Tega Winogo.
Well, I was going with Wiley, but I'm not sure whether to place him at tackle or guard.
Okay.
He's a backup right tackle, though, I think.
Well, we had him already on our lock as a guard. So we already have him as a lock on the team. So
I don't think I have anything different than what we already had locked.
okay. Um, I think Prince Tega Wanogo is another player that that I figured would be on this team. They've kept him around now for what, 2 or 3 years. I don't know that he's even been active though, but
I
he
will
was on.
concede him to you guys.
He was on the active 53, I think, basically all season last year. Um, Another player though that I have highlighted is Garion Christian. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
And he's a veteran player. He's 26 years old, but he's another player that they get no cap savings from if they cut him. So he's another player that they would be paying $1 million in dead cap space plus what, another 700,000 to have somebody else take his 53-man roster spot. I'm sticking with this theme, and so for that reason, I don't think that he's going to get cut. I think that Garen Christian or Jaron Christian, however you say his name, makes this team as one of the offensive tackles. I think there's just too many players that they can cut them and they don't cost anything against the dead caps, dead cap. And so when they have all these players that do and they cost over $1 million, you know, to me that says these are players that have basically been guaranteed that they have a roster spot because that's what the contract suggests. If you're going to pay someone $1 million and basically all of that it is if over the cap and if Spot Track is right about the structure of these contracts, then that suggests to me that Christian is going to make this team. Um, so if Niang isn't healthy, I'm gonna say 4 offensive tackles. So in addition to Brown and Kennard, I'm gonna say Prince Tega Winogo and Christian.
And I just don't know how to classify Wiley exactly.
Right. I'm gonna put him as just
Guard.
backup offensive lineman. We had him listed as guard. But yeah, I think that he's gonna fill in on the right side as a backup, and it doesn't really matter. Um, so we had 4 offensive guards because of that, though. We had Tooney, Trey Smith, Andrew Wiley, and Nick Allegretti. So that's 4 offensive guards right there.
And then Allegretti's basically a backup center as well.
Right.
But does
So-
Creed take the Tooney deal and he won't even come out for a fractured bone?
Right. And I wonder though if Allegretti. Well, since I think since we did our first recording, the Chiefs brought back Austin Ryder for some reason.
Again?
Again.
Just to cut him. How many times can we cut this guy? Keeps coming back for more.
At some point, you got to start taking it personally, right?
Learn how to play then. I caught
Let me
myself.
check here.
No edit.
All right, now I will say this. All right, so they did bring Austin Ryder back. Not guaranteed at all. So there is no dead money from cutting Austin Ryder, and that's the difference between him and some of these other guys. So, yeah, I
That
think
makes it pretty easy.
maybe competition. Gooch, are you adding any offensive tackles other than Brown and Kennard?
Yeah, I think this is Prince Taco when the Ho-Hos last year.
We'll go
He's gonna get some playing time. So I'd have Kennard and PW. I'm just gonna start calling him PW. And PW at right tackle, Brown and Wiley at left tackle. Niang on the pup list.
Okay. So offensive guard, we had 4 on there. Are we adding any more than the 4 that we had?
Can I go back?
Nope.
I don't think Wiley's the left tackle. I think Tooney's the backup left tackle. And Wiley gets slotted into left guard if it comes down to it.
That's what Allegretti played quite a bit, though, during the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, but he was sandwiched between 2 all-world tackles. Well, 1 all-world tackle and Eric Fisher. And then, even though he really stood up and didn't have nobody to block.
And Austin Ryder?
Yeah. Only center in the history of the NFL that would snap the ball, stand up, and there'd be nobody in front of him. Mostly because they're all past him already.
Because he didn't assign himself anybody to block. He didn't give up a sack.
That's true.
Because he had no assignment.
I think Tooney is the third string at left tackle and probably center as well. You know, if you remember last year, Tooney played left tackle, but it was after Orlando went down, and then Lucas Niang moved over to left tackle, and then he went down in that game. That's when Tooney played. He was the third option there, but it also worked out for him because he faced a edge rusher who also had short arms. So I don't think he's a second option. I think he's the third option at left tackle, and I'd probably say maybe the same thing at center or I guess anywhere else on the line. But we'll see. Anyway, are we sticking with the four guards that we had locked in originally? Are we adding anybody else to that? I don't have anyone else added at the guard position. If we have, for me, I have four offensive tackles and four guards, um, which is eight, and then Creed brings it up to nine, and so then it's just a question of is Austin Ryder or Daryl Williams, the center, going to make the team and bring the offensive line up to 10? And I'm somewhat inclined to say yes.
Austin Ryder.
Yeah, he might be. Daryl Williams is the center, right? Because there's multiple Daryl Williams. Um, the center has been on this team, kind of hanging around on the practice squad and things now for like 2 or 3 years as well. I think maybe he's the backup. Maybe not. Maybe it's all going to come down to a numbers game. Right now, I have 9 offensive linemen, and I do think that I mean, with Alec Gretty, he could be the backup center.
Who did
So
we trade at the end of last year? Seems like it was a Mizzou guy. We traded at the last of the preseason. Could do another one of those with Winnebago.
yeah, I think it might depend on how everything shakes out injury wise. Probably how Niang is progressing. So we all had 4 offensive tackles, I think, or Gooch and I both had 4 offensive tackles. So anyway, that's adding 2 right there. I'm keeping Bell on there, so that's 3 more for me. 3 more running backs is 6. That brings my offensive numbers up to 24. And again, I don't want to keep Bell.
Because of Bell.
And that's 24 before even adding in the receivers. If I keep 2, that's 26 right there. We want to thank you guys for watching this video brought to you by RGR Football. If you're not already a subscriber to RGR, make sure that you subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you know when RGR has live content or new content available, including premieres. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.